It's like an It was like an HD remake slash.
But that was great. It still was. It was simple, and they didn't try to do anything fancy. I loved it.
And that's why. So that was the whole thing. Is you had basketball games obviously before. The sports games have been around forever, but they were all. I mean, you had 5 players on the court. You had all the rules. Like this was such like literally 2-on-2. Your goal was to take it back and forth. Which honestly, it was literally the perfect personification of like the core basketball experience for a lot of people, right? I mean, you have people obviously that get hung up on like sports simulators where you want everything. You want the stats, you want the trading of the players, all this stuff. This has none of that, but to me, it's some of the best basketball gameplay of any basketball game.
So I think, thinking about the games that we've discussed in our 10 episodes, we've discussed Mario. But the Mario that we discussed, I don't think was a game changer. It was a great game. It helped launch the Super Nintendo, but it didn't. It just took what Mario 1, 2, and 3 did and just kept it going.
Yeah.
Kept getting bigger.
Yep.
It didn't revolutionize anything. It certainly brought the Super Nintendo's hardware front and center. I think the 2 games that we've discussed in our 10 episodes that have changed video gaming is Street Fighter 2, which is our previous episode.
Yep.
And this NBA Jam. And the reason I feel NBA Jam changed everything is traditionally, not all the time, you have your stereotypical nerds and your stereotypical jocks. And few times and few people can walk both lines. This is my wife talking for a second. You can walk both lines. I could sit here and tell you and break down the new Venom trailer that just came out and how it hopefully may tie into the MCU. I could sit here and talk about Power Rangers ad nauseum, as you see on our YouTube channel. But I can also tell you why the Rangers were eliminated in Game 6 by the Florida Panthers 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So I can walk both those lines. This game does that.
Yeah.
It has the nerds going, I really want to play NBA games because it's all about the simulations and this and that. Yeah. Oh, shit, that guy just did a backflip and broke the backboard. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you have the guys that don't want anything to do with, video game. That's stupid. I got to do my own thing and whatnot. And look at this and go, oh, that's different.
And it's easy to play, so people that don't like video games.
Exactly.
My wife loves this game, and she hates video games. Like, that's
I've never met anybody that's disliked NBA Jam. Sorry to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, like, we have I think I've probably mentioned this a few times on the show. We've got those arcades, in our house upstairs. And the one that she wants, of course, it's super expensive now. She's like, I would play NBA Jam if you got that cabinet. It's like $600, so, like, I'm not going to get it. But
I mean, I don't know what's a better anniversary gift than that.
Well, and
text us if you think Dan should buy his wife NBA Jam and the arcade cabinet.
Fair enough. Well, and speaking of which, we kind of didn't really mention it. This was an arcade game before it got ported to consoles. It came out a year prior in 1993 in arcades. I never played it in the arcade. Did you ever play it in the arcade back in the day?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did. At a laser tag. Again, the things that you remember are just so random, but I do remember playing just NBA Jam. I think it was just the regular version, because that came out in 93. NBA Jam, the original, came out in 93.
Correct. And so I feel like you talked about how you got your Sega. Did you rent this game then? Is that how you played it on Genesis?
I rented this.
Okay.
And then I guess I liked it so much I got it on Game Gear. I also feel like this is one of those games that was difficult to find.
Back in
it was a difficult game to find because it was just so popular.
It was. The original and Tournament Edition. And again, so I mentioned I played Tournament Edition. I never owned it either. We rented it. And actually, so we had... I think there's still a thing today. Did you guys ever have any friends that had like exchange students that lived with them from other countries? Like I
personally didn't have any friends that did that, but I knew.
You've heard of it though, because I think it's still a thing. The exchange. Anyway, we for a few years in a row we would host exchange students, and one of them, and I'll shout him out because I think he listens to the show. What's up, Brian? Brian is from Denmark, okay, and he was in high school when he came to stay with us back in the mid '90s, and he was a huge sports guy, right? He played soccer. He was actually, of course, like the all-star player on our team because he played, in Denmark where people actually take soccer very seriously, and so he was really good. But I actually played a lot of my sports games that if we ever cover other ones, like I have other ones that I want to talk about in the future because he either bought them or rented them and like played them on our Sega Genesis, and this was one of them. And I remember because he rented this game, and I'm like, this is amazing. And then we ended up owning a different basketball game that I thought was this game, and it wasn't. And at first I was very disappointed. I ended up really liking it later. It's called Tecmo Super NBA Basketball. It was like more like a legit basketball simulator for the time. But he had this one first, and I thought it was so cool that you were, like you said, jamming on fire. Like, it was like the big rare thing to like break the rim, like shatter the backboard rather, or burn up the nets and whatnot. And so like I loved this game so much. So there's a few games that he brought home that were sports games that I thought were the coolest, and this is probably one of the first ones because to this day, and it's one of those where I feel like I forgot about it for many years until like somebody mentioned it one time and said something like boom shakalaka, and like all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, it just triggered a core memory for me or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, that game is real. Because I think for the longest time I was associating that other NBA game that I ended up owning with NBA Jam, going, oh, that didn't happen in that game. But it was because it was this other game.
So did you know that this is technically the second over-the-top basketball game that Acclaim Midway released?
I did not, actually.
So in my research, this is the unofficial sequel to the NES. This game came out on NES, developed by a variety of different people. It was published by Midway and Acclaim Entertainment. I feel like publishers and developers back in the day was very shady.
Well, yeah, because...
And like the Konami Ultra thing also happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying it was developed by Midway, Rare, and it has NES next to it. Arc developers for Game Gear and Genesis. Published by Midway and Acclaim. Man, just a Midway and Acclaim just scream 90s.
Yes.
So the game is called Arch Rivals with a subtitle of A Basket Brawl.
Interesting. Okay.
And it did not have an NBA license. So Arch Rivals allows players to select from a variety of fictional teams and players, so there's no real players either. And basically, it's the precursor to an NBA Jam-like game. The graphics weren't bad. It came out of the arcade as well, but it was the precursor to what we know as NBA Jam. So I thought that was interesting when I was looking things up.
I'm looking at screenshots of it now, and if you look at the arcade screenshots especially, yeah, you can absolutely see where they got NBA Jam from, because it's a 2-on, it looks to be 2-on-2. You had wow, okay, I never knew this existed. And
there you go. This is what the show's all about.
I know. I'll have to go check that the video out for that. So for those who are uninitiated, we talked about how this is the oversimplification of basketball. How it breaks down is, again, normally you've got 5 players on the court per team. This game's only got 2. You're playing 2-on-2 basketball. You can pick from any of the NBA teams that were around in the 93 and 94 seasons, which, honestly, there's not many different... I feel like that's one thing with the NBA, is they've added maybe a couple of teams, but for the most part, they've been pretty... Like, are there any teams from this this year's that don't exist anymore? I feel like...
The Supersonics.
There's no more... What are they now? Oh, that's right.
They're OKC. They're
the Oklahoma
City Thunder.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So they're gone, and then the Toronto Raptors are not in this game.
Okay, but they weren't around yet, though, right?
They weren't around yet. The Vancouver/Memphis Grizzlies are not in this game yet.
Yep. And then you had the Wizards are not in this game.
The Wizards, I think they're still the Washington Bullets. I believe they're the Bullets in this game.
I think so. Okay, so
the Wizards, sense. Bullets, the same franchise. It's funny. The Charlotte Hornets became the Bobcats, and then they became the Hornets again. But they moved to New Orleans and the Pelicans. It was weird for a little bit.
Yeah.
Talking about that, though, you like you said, all the teams are in this. It's important to go over. Now with all these sports games, they're based on the previous year's teams and players and stats.
Yep.
For this, I can't say for certain if it was just it came out in 93, it's based on 92, and in 94 it's based on 93. So I did pull up, and I was pretty sure I knew who the champions were. But for the sake of, in case you didn't know, the NBA champions in 1991 were the Bulls.
Yep.
In 92, they were the Bulls. And 93, it was the Bulls.
There it is. And they were the best team in the game.
And 94, it was the Houston Rockets, because Michael Jordan decided to go play baseball.
That's right. And that was because had Barkley hadn't moved to the Rockets yet. Then Barkley was still in the Suns, but that was like and then the Bulls, then he came back and the Bulls won again. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Bulls would have at least tied, in my opinion, the 4-in-a-row dynasty that the last pro team to do was the Islanders back in the early 80s. The Bulls would have at least matched that.
Oh, yeah, if not had gotten 5. I mean,
they probably would have. They would have won the entire decade. Honestly, they probably would have won 6 or 7 in a row if Jordan stayed.
Well, listen, here's the thing. Jordan took a break, and I think we all know the real reason why he stepped away from the NBA, right?
Why do you think that?
Well, he had to go help out the Looney Tunes with their little alien problem.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everyone knows that. In fact, I just watched that movie the other night. You know, I told my kids, listen, this is a documentary from about 30 years ago that you guys need to pay attention to. This is why Michael Jordan stopped playing for a year. Yeah. And they understood. So, but no, yeah. And then he came back and... Yeah.
He wore number 45, which is garbage.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I was going to ask you about that too. Well, I was going to ask you about that because I noticed that at the end of Space Jam, because I wasn't following the Bulls fervently. I knew he was 23 until he wasn't. How long did he wear 45 for? Did he ever go back to 23?
He went back to 23. I think he just wanted to sell merchandise.
Oh, so I guess...
And they came back and they had, I believe, they had the red and the white jerseys. But I believe when Jordan came back, don't hold me to it, folks. It's just, it kind of goes to the number 45. I think they debuted the black jersey with the red pinstripes.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised if, here's a new color. Oh, here's a new number.
Right. Yep.
Because he wore 23 in North Carolina.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, again, this is one of those games where you had the real teams. You also had the real players, right?
Except
Michael Jordan.
Yep.
And I have and we can talk about it now, but that's part of one of the shout-outs I want to give later, because I had one of the listeners write in, explain, because I actually legit had posted on Facebook, I was like, why was Jordan not in this game? And somebody actually explained it to me. So we'll save it for then, but we will absolutely cover why Michael Jordan, the most obviously famous Chicago Bulls player of all time, was not in this game.
I would say he's probably the most famous basketball player of all time, period.
Yeah, I mean,
this generation is going to say LeBron, but...
No, but I guess it's a matter of, like, Michael Jordan is the Hulk Hogan of basketball. Everyone knows him, no matter what.
That's true. Even if you don't know anything about basketball, you know that's the sport Michael Jordan plays.
Exactly.
If you don't know anything about pro wrestling, that's the thing that Hulk Hogan does.
If you know anything about baseball, you've heard of Babe Ruth.
Yep.
A little bit earlier in history. But who would be, like, the NFL equivalent for, would you say?
Probably Tom Brady.
Tom Brady at this point? I was going to say, like, Joe Montana, maybe.
I'll tell you who it's not. Anybody on the freaking Jets.
Well,
Joe
Namath.
No, it could be Aaron Rodgers. Oh, that's the guy on the Jets that tries to play football, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's right, yeah.
Did you know, since I'm going to do 2 seconds of football, so obviously he got injured game 1 on Monday Night Football, right? Because my phone almost exploded from all the text messages I got.
Oh, yeah.
Including you. Do you know when the Jets are playing their home season opener?
Where's that?
Monday Night Football again. Come on.
And he's starting, as far as we know?
He's going to be playing, but at least he's in San Francisco. So It's going to be warm weather, but...
Yeah. Jeez.
Come on, don't put us on Monday night again. I could see ESPN going over it over and over again. Well, last year at this time, stop.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, they'll get a lot of media coverage. Yep. So for the Bulls, then, you had... Now, this is the other difference, too. I want to talk about this. The other difference between the original and the tournament edition of NBA Jam. In the original version, you only had 2 players. That was it. In tournament edition, you had, I believe, 3 players, and you could choose a combination of them.
I think you had more.
You might have been more, even, but I know at least 3, because you could swap them out and then pick who you wanted to play as. And then there was, I think it was Pippen and...
Horace Grant?
It was Horace Grant, and then there was another guy that they brought in for tournament edition.
Kukoc, Kerr.
Yeah.
I can name majority of the guys on the Bulls just because we grew up then. It was...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing, too. Like, as an example, I know the starting lineup of the New York Yankees from 98 to 2000, or maybe 2001, because that was our childhood, and they were the best team, so of course you know them. It was when they kind of transcended the sport, so to speak.
Yeah.
But, so you had the 3 players, and they all had their individual stats, too, which I thought was kind of cool. And in fact, I do want to shout out longtime listener to the show, Odie and Levy. He actually turned me on to this. I have an Easter egg I want to share with you, Lou.
Sure.
Okay, and you tell me if you know this, but in NBA Jam Tournament Edition, there is a notable Easter egg involving Scottie Pippen and the Detroit Pistons. Do you know about this?
No, I don't.
All right, check this out. When playing against the Pistons, Scottie Pippen's performance would mysteriously drop.
It has something to do, did he choke in a game or a playoff series? Or
So
he couldn't have. They won. I mean,
well, and apparently, and I didn't realize this, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe there was a kind of a rivalry between the Detroit Pistons and the Chicago Bulls at this time. And so it was actually programmed into the game where his attributes would decrease when he faces the Pistons, which is not only a nod to the intense rivalry that existed between the Pistons and the Bulls during the late 80s and early 90s, particularly during the era of when the Pistons had their Bad Boys team. When,
with Rodman and everybody.
Exactly. And so it was,
And Rodman came to the Bulls.
Right. So very physical. So apparently the game developers were huge Pistons fans, and so they wanted to. So they literally threw that in. So if you're ever and it's funny is I played as the Bulls, and I just picked another team in my division to play as when I started playing this to do research, and I got my ass handed to me, and I'm pretty sure now I know why. So anyway, shout out to Odie and Levy, and I love that there's so many little what I'm saying is there's so many little Easter eggs in this game.
See, when I think, maybe because I'm a New Yorker, when I think Bulls rivals, no, I'd say, even just saying it out loud, not really, because I was about to say, first of all, I want to go on record, I loved basketball in this era.
Yeah.
Well, I like it now, but I loved the 90s basketball. I was about to say the Knicks' biggest rival was the Bulls, and then I think about Reggie Miller doing the choke to Spike Lee. He was doing the choke sign when Reggie Miller beat the Knicks. The basketball, this was my favorite era of basketball. I get it. Everybody liked Jordan, but maybe because the Knicks were good, which is, I mean, they did okay this year, but Ewing and Starks against, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, and then against Reggie Miller on the Pacers. Those were just good. And you were talking about the Bad Boys in Detroit with Rodman. And then I mentioned John Stockton, Karl Malone. That's another good tandem around this time period. Yep. David Robinson in San Antonio with those colorful jerseys they had with the San Antonio Spurs.
Yep.
Man, this era was awesome. And I get it. That generation before us is going to say, shut up. It's all about the Celtics and the Lakers and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. I get that, but for my money, this was the era that I enjoyed the basketball the most.
So let me ask you then, because I'd love to get your, you're more of a sports guy than I am. So I would agree the 90s to me is the epitome for peak NBA popularity. I mean, you had space, you had all these movies, whatever, it was the thing. What decades would you say defined, for example, baseball for you? Is it the same 90s, the same period, or was it a little later? For me, it was the late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, yeah, because we're Yankee fans.
I guess that's
going to be why. But baseball, well, let me finish up about the basketball thing. Not only do we have all those great players and Space Jam and games like this, who doesn't love the theme for the NBA on NBC? You know it.
Do I know it?
Not know? You know it. You've heard it before.
I mean, I probably have, but
when you listen to it, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. It's gonna be a core memory.
You're not gonna hum it for me or something? I mean,
well, I could play it off my phone for 10 seconds.
No, we're not gonna get flagged. Just you can't just acapella it for me. Come on, Lou. Nope.
That's probably a bad thing.
I'll blame myself. That's not your fault. I mean, it wasn't very good, but that wasn't your fault. So,
yes, it was.
No, I see, but I know the ESP, or I know the Monday Night Football one from that era.
To me, it's on the same tier as that.
Okay, see, and I didn't watch enough NBA for that to have been drilled in my head.
If we're never gonna go to this again, this might even be a short. I should cut it right now. The best theme songs for each sport is, like you said, Monday Night Football for football.
Yep,
obviously. NBA on NBC, NHL on ESPN, and MLB on Fox are the best for each. Do you know any of those other than Monday Night Football? The Fox on baseball, you definitely know.
I probably would. Yeah, it'd have to be triggered. I'll look it up after this. We won't. We won't.
It won't make me sing again.
Yeah.
The thing with baseball is it had a down period in the mid-90s. We had a
because of the
a
strike.
podcast. Yeah, because of the strike, and then everybody's hitting home runs. Well,
Yeah.
how are they doing that? Don't worry about that. Just look at all the home runs.
Right.
That's why baseball took off with the home run chase, and then you had the biggest market in the world have a dynasty.
Yep.
That's why it took off.
That's true. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess early to mid 90s is basketball, late 90s is baseball. I would say early to mid 2000s for me was like peak NFL. Although technically NFL had a thing in the, I mean, I guess that's
NFL never really.
and there it's always been
Had
kind
a
of
lull.
up there. Yeah, no, that's true. So, all right. One other thing I wanted to talk about with this game in Midway in particular is we talked about how they made all those sports games. They also made WrestleMania the arcade game, which I feel like
Oh shit!
was
Yeah.
very similar to this case. It came out around the same time. But just that pick up and play, you know, they basically turned wrestling into a fighting game,
Yep.
which, I mean, they kind of did that with the other sports games. But, like, that's another one where, like, you had realistic looking kind of sprites
Yep.
and just, like, over the top craziness and very easy to, again, pick up and play. And they were arcade games, so you had to be able to pick up and play, because if you're going to drop a quarter in, you better know how to play that thing in like less than a minute. Otherwise, you're going to get your ass handed to you. So, let's talk about some of the differences between the original NBA Jam and Tournament Edition, because there are some pretty key differences that, in my opinion, make it the definitive way to play it, whether it's arcades or consoles. First off, we talked about it a little bit, but you got the expanded roster. Not only can you have now, it is, and I confirmed it's 3 players. It is 3 players per
It is.
team.
I felt like it was more, but sure. Yep.
No, it's 3 players, and then you could actually add for, allow for substitutions in between to like have like
Yeah.
more strategic gameplay. So, for example, if you're playing against the Pistons, pull out Scottie Pippen because he's gonna freaking choke. But in general, you know, again, with those 3 players allotted, you've got a larger roster to pull from as well. Although still no Shaquille O'Neal, I believe, right? I don't think
Ooh, I don't know if he was in that because he would be on the Magic.
he'd be on the mat. Now it's funny because I remember, like, or recently, like, we talked about, you know, buying the NBA Jam cabinets. There is a Shaq edition of the cabinet. So maybe they released one with Shaq, or maybe this was a new thing they put him in. I don't know.
Yeah, I just typed in NBA Shaq and it comes up with the Shaq edition.
Right.
Why is Shaq not in the NBA?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's probably a reason for it, why he wasn't in the game, but I remember that specifically.
Well, it specifically says the original version of NBA Jam did not have Shaq on the Orlando Magic. His rights could not be obtained when making ports of NBA Jam, a.k.a. he wanted extra money.
All right, so it was
And the same
similar
thing
to
with Jordan. He wanted money.
Similar to Jordan, exactly. So, okay, so that makes sense. Now, a couple of new things they added around like features and power-ups, which again, I love this. So they had this features called hotspots. Do you remember this whole thing where they would put like random spots around the court? And so basically, if you took shots from them, you could get additional points. There were power-ups and special abilities that could be activated. Now, I will say there was one thing that you couldn't. So they had this. It was called tournament mode, which again, tournament edition. That kind of makes sense. Basically, this game apparently was played very competitively back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
You could enable tournament mode, and it would disable all of the kind of bullshit power-ups to make it a fair game, essentially. And then you could do like a bracket-style playoff game. So like legit, you could have your buddies over and have an NBA, like kind of like people do now with like, obviously like Smash Brothers, but people will do Madden nights or whatever, you know, different sports games. You could do this with NBA Jam very easily. And so not only did you have all these cool power-ups, we kind of touched on it before again, but like player tributes, so like basically how they performed in various aspects of the game, like dunking, how fast they could run, three-point shots, those were all more finely tuned for the tournament edition. The other thing I noticed too, playing them back-to-back, is I figured they'd be identical, but the graphics actually are significantly changed between the two versions as well. The original I felt was kind of cartoony, whereas the updated version, the players were still kind of cartoon-ish, but like more accurate proportions. And not only that, but like the sound was way better because I was playing the original going like, the audio kind of sucks. I don't remember the audio sounding this bad. And that's when I played Tournament Edition, and all of a sudden, even from like the opening get-go where you see the dude doing a flipping dunk off of the Acclaim logo, I'm like, oh, or was it the Sega logo? Doesn't matter. You heard the guys, boom, shakalaka. I was like, oh, okay, this is the game that I played, because all of a sudden the music kicked in that I remember. You had more of that commentator. Who was that commentator, by the way?
He's the commentator. Is the same guy. His name is... I literally just had it. Tim Kirkwads.
Okay.
Karaz. He's actually, fun fact, he's going to be at an autograph setting up here in Albany.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, but he wasn't like an actual sports commentator.
I don't think he was.
He might have just been for the game or whatever.
Maybe.
So, but yeah, so like they made the visuals look better. They had more of there's a few phrases that again stick in my head to this day. So like, do you remember what happened if you score 3 baskets in a row? Do you remember what he says?
He's on fire.
Yep.
Oh no, he's heating up.
Well, heating up is with 2 in a row, and then he's on fire for the third one. Because that was and much like I remember that from NFL Blitz too. If you get a certain number of completions, your player is on fire, and then they can do more.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the mechanic that they took from NBA Jam, which I thought was kind of cool. Fun fact, by the way, we talked about some of the Easter eggs, but apparently there were some secret characters available for play. I've never unlocked them, but do you know some of them were actually like Mortal Kombat characters?
Yes, I do know that. I know this is the time also when GamePro was the shit.
Yes, because they had everything that you could want out of we should do that one time. Would you want to do like a gaming magazine episode one time?
I just went to a garage sale. It was a whole stack of them, but I did find I could do one. I have perfect timing. I just found a Nintendo Power.
Okay.
With the cover is of a game that we will be discussing this month in June.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited. Then we'll save it for that.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Anyway, so there was one other mode in tournament edition that a lot of people would turn on. It was called Juice Mode. Do you remember this mode?
Is that the constant turbo?
Basically, yeah. Just it sped up the game. So, but now you couldn't use it. I don't think if tournament mode was turned on.
Mm-hmm.
You want to do a countdown?
Oh, I was just gonna say keep going. I was telling you to keep talking.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Okay.
Sorry. Clap our hands.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. So, it was again all these different features you could unlock in tournament edition. It really was. It's the best way to play it. As far as NBA Jam goes, because they made sequels, obviously. In fact, let me ask you about this because I don't know if we'll necessarily do a whole episode on it because I never played it back in the day. But did you ever play NBA Hang Time, which was like the sequel on consoles for this?
No, the only thing I played after NBA Jam was both versions, and then I got into the more simulated games.
Right.
Once the Dreamcast came out, it was like game over. Dreamcast sports games were amazing.
Oh, they were. And again, that's Sega, right? I think Sega why? Okay. And I feel like we have absolutely had this conversation before, but why do you think Sega sports games are better? Is it just because they have them more so? Like they made some sports games for Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I just feel once the Dreamcast came out, it just revolutionized the sports games. Like I still think NFL 2K, is it 4 or 5? I always say this. They put more care. I feel like they put more care into the games.
Yeah.
I feel like I saw on my PlayStation 5 that this past year's Madden was on sale for $12. I just gave it a Google. I had like a 1.5 star review.
Right.
Thousands of reviews. They go, it's terrible. It's like they change. I feel like it's more about loot boxes or ultimate teams to buy those cards now.
Right. Or
you have to be an expert. There's no casual gaming anymore.
For sports.
For sports. There's modes in like the current NHL and NBA games. There's a mode, but it's not a whole game, so to speak.
Right.
That's why I think it is. But also, it was competition. And we know that from being wrestling fans, you need competition.
Absolutely.
Madden doesn't have any competition.
Yeah.
NHL and EA has no competition. There's one basketball game by 2K. There's EA makes NHL and Madden. and then Sony in-house makes MLB. That's it. There used to be like 3 or 4 versions of each type of sport.
That's true. Yeah, it would. Even on I was looking up different Sega NBA games, and there's 10, I think. It's crazy. Yeah. And I think a lot of it's probably licensing and whatnot, because you would have back in the day these sports franchises be yeah, dude, put us as long as we're making money off of these publishers, we'll whore ourselves out to the highest bidders. And then at some point, I guess in the mid 2000s, these gaming studios got wise. They were no, we'll make your game and we'll make it better than anyone else, but we need to be the exclusive maker of your franchise.
When I want to say, I think it was 2005. I was either 2005 or 2006. The Sega games, and they weren't on Dreamcast anymore. Dreamcast is gone. Their 2K series goes on to Xbox and Sony.
Yep.
To compete with Madden, they put out the NFL game at $20. So here I am as a consumer in college with no money. I walk into a store and I say, I can buy Madden for $50 or for $60. I can buy NBA, NHL, and NFL 2K for $60.
Mm-hmm.
Done. Yeah. No brainer. The NFL hated the fact, because the 2K game that year outperformed in sales Madden because it was $20.
Right. And it was it was a good game.
It was a great game. The NFL did not like the idea that their IP, that stands for intellectual property, kids, was being sold at a discount, signed an exclusive deal with Madden, done. No more NFL games on anything else by EA, and they've sucked ever since.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and of course this year too, another game that's maybe got me curious to check out a PS5 again is the college football game coming out.
Yeah, the last game I ever bought on the Dreamcast was College Football 2K2 with Drew Brees on the cover.
Mm-hmm. And, we'll see. Anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole too much. Yeah. All right, listen, before we talk about games that will scratch that fun sports game itch, I want to give a few shout-outs, folks that have shared their memories of NBA Jam from back in the day. Our first one comes from Andrew in New Windsor, New York. It was a great game to play. Speaking about NBA Jam, I just hated the fact that Jordan wasn't on the Bulls due to Jordan opting out of the Players Association license in order to control his own likeness. And quite frankly, I think it benefited him in the long run. He made a lot more money doing what he did. We're just annoyed that we can't play as him in NBA Jam. Ben from Delray Beach, Florida. I remember Steve Kerr couldn't miss from the range. So maybe
who couldn't miss?
Steve Kerr.
Oh, he was great from three-point.
Yeah, so apparently that was, that they enabled him to obviously hit his three-pointers more often than not.
That's like Steph Curry right now. You're not going to miss with him.
Exactly, yeah. So, John from Atlanta. I was introduced to my favorite player of all time, Vlad Divac. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Could be.
He played for the Lakers.
Okay.
So he said, by randomly choosing the Lakers the first time I played the game, I had no idea who he was then, and I also didn't understand the controls, so I just jacked the shots from the other side of the court, and I lost miserably. I would go on to put in hundreds of hours on Jam and Hang Time, learning all the ins and outs of the rubber band AI, and now I own just about every piece of Vlad memorabilia that exists. So that's
really okay. That's great.
That's kind of cool. I like that. It's kind of like how I learned about my favorite golfer of all time from one of the PGA games on Sega Genesis. Fuzzy Zoeller.
I used to play NHL 97 with my dad, and he always picked the random teams. Like, why are you picking the Vancouver Canucks or some random team? He goes, that's how I'm going to learn who's on the team.
So I like that. That's cool, though. Yeah. Okay. That's really cool, actually. Yeah. Pedro also coming in from Atlanta. I love that the game, I love the game with all my heart, and my team was the Orlando Magic. Without Shaq, funnily enough, but I can't even think of any other notable players from the Magic back then.
I want to say I think Horace Grant was on them too. Well, they weren't very. I mean, I know that they went to the finals one time in the 90s, but they're not really a great franchise.
They were the house that built Shaq before they became the house that Shaq built.
Yeah,
I mean
they're owned by Disney, so they have unlimited money, so they'll be fine.
That's true. Oh yeah, no, obviously they're fine.
But sweet jerseys and a sweet logo.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And finally, we have Dan in Lake George, just reconfirming what we talked about earlier. TE or Tournament Edition was the absolute best version to play NBA Jam. So, a little reaffirmation there.
So how about some of the unlockables quickly? Because you always like to have a little bit of behind-the-scenes stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. What do you got?
So we have some unlockable characters include Will Smith as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yep.
Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, First Lady Hillary Clinton, and Prince Charles from our neighbors over in the UK.
I mean, can you get any more 90s than that? I feel like that's
great.
Well,
actually, you can. How about Frank Thomas from the Chicago White Sox?
Okay.
And Randall Cunningham from the Philadelphia Eagles is in this as well.
Oh, jeez.
The mascots are also in this, and the Beastie Boys.
Oh, really?
The Beastie Boys and Team ESPN.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So, yeah, I remember an urban myth about Bill Clinton being in the game, but yeah, it is real.
Well, and
it's just via cheat codes when you go to enter in stuff, so it's not difficult.
Well, that's the other thing. Again, it's a midway game, right? When you have the matchup screen, you put in a button combination to unlock cheats. Like in Mortal Kombat, if you did certain button combinations, you could enable different modes in
Big Head mode.
Well, there's Big Head mode. There's all kinds of, and again, that's all midway, right? Midway is the game that kind of like invented it or perfected. I don't even know. Like they mainstreamed like these funky cheat codes to make the game more fun, and they continued it after this with NFL Blitz, NHL Hits, all of those.
Yep.
So, all right. We talked about how sports games have gotten really technical, and quite frankly, if I were to even pick up a good Madden game now, I would get my ass kicked. And I'm not good at them, right? There's really no modern. Actually, it's funny. I was talking with somebody about this the other day.
It was me.
Was it you? No, I was
just
saying.
Texting.
Well, we were texting, but I was telling a friend like the only modern sports game I'm actually okay at is NHL, and that's because of you. Like, you're the reason is because I played it with you and I got to practice with it.
Love those San Jose Sharks. They were good when we were in college.
Well, that and they had the best entrance in the entire game, man. They had the freaking inflatable shark. It was dope.
Yeah, came through the shark head.
I know, man. So anyway, but again, when you're talking about a simpler time, games that you can just pick up and play and have fun with a good old-fashioned American pastime, there's not a lot of games out there these days, Lou. I did my research, and there's not many that kind of scratch the itch. But here we go. Let's talk about it. I got a couple of, I guess you could call them honorable mentions and some close enoughs in this week's segment of Scratch the Itch. And the honorable mention will be the NBA Jam HD remake. I guess you refer to it as the On Fire edition from 2011. Now, it's an honorable mention because it's technically on a system that we are going to be covering as part of this podcast, which is technically retro nostalgia. However, I'm giving it an honorable mention because you can still download and play it on a modern Xbox console.
Can you play it on the current consoles? I know you could do it on the 360.
I have it. Well, I have an Xbox One, and I'm playing it on my Xbox One. So,
okay. No, I have it on the Xbox One. I didn't know if you could do it on the.
I don't know about the Series X or S because I don't have it. But I feel like one thing that Xbox has done well is had the backwards compatibility throughout pretty much their entire lifetime. So if you could get it on Xbox One, there's a very good chance you can get it on the Series X or Series S.
I have one honorable mention as well. This is fairly close. NBA 2K makes it. Well, 2K makes this. It is called NBA 2K Playgrounds 2. It's actually out on the Switch.
Really? Okay.
Yes, and PS4. So it's a PS4, Switch. I mean, Switch is the current generation. Right now, costs about. It looks like you can get it for $15 on PS4 and about $25 on the Switch. It's kind of similar. It's cartoony, 2-on-2. I've never played it, but 2K makes. The only basketball game now because EA doesn't make NBA Live anymore. So that's probably your closest thing to it. I can't, just looking at it, I haven't played it, but that's...
Yeah. Now, this is where I think we're a little closer to home with more modern games. The first one actually is going to be another basketball game called Dunk Lords. Now, full disclosure, I have not played this game yet. It's called Dunk Lords. It came out a couple years ago. It is available on Switch, Xbox One, and PC. It is essentially a beat-em-up basketball game. And I actually showed you the trailer for it the other day, Lou, and literally you've got these like sci-fi robots, whatever, and you're doing hella cool dunks, and you're kind of beating the shit out of your opponents. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot there with regards to NBA Jam and kind of that simplistic basketball action type game. The other one though that I want to share is it's not a basketball game, but I feel like it's a game that is a perfect representation of a pick up and play sports game that you can play on all major consoles, including PC, and that is Super Mega Baseball 3. That's a great game.
I love it.
Yeah, I think I introduced you to it, and then kind of like Gears of War, you went on and like played the hell out of all the sequels. So like, there's 4 Super Mega Baseball games now. Which ones?
I played the first 2.
First 2, okay.
Yes.
And there is, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of customization and stuff that goes into it, but it is it's a pick up and play baseball game, right? Like it's very easy to play. So again, if you want a modern day pick up and play sports game, that's probably your best bet. Or honestly, the other thing, didn't even put this on my list, but I'll throw it out there, is Super Mario Strikers. Which did you ever play those, the Mario soccer games?
Yep.
So they have one on the Switch, and again, it's a very simplistic kind of soccer rugby hybrid game, and it's a lot of fun. So there you go. That was rough. Honestly, there's certain genres of games we will cover on this show where there are absolutely like retro remake type games that exist that scratch the itch. Sports games is not really one of them. Fighting games is not really one of them because not a lot of indie companies are making these types of games, unfortunately. Which, I mean, that sucks for us, but I mean, whatever. You got to go where the money's at.